You're listening to Last Word Radio, where you get the last word.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. This is November 11th, Remembrance Day 2019. With you today is myself, Carl, and the always wonderful Stevie Nick.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Fell into an old habit there, eh?
I did. Nick, I warned you already. 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago, your apartment almost caught on fire?
Yeah.
It might be my turn. I had smoke coming from my mixer as we pressed record today, and the smell of burning plastic has yet to leave the room. Who knows what is happening, but we're still going.
Well, you know what they say about where there's smoke.
There's probably unhealthy things to breathe in.
Yeah, and hot takes, I'm sure. Let's
Smoking
find out.
hot takes. Let's go. Happy Remembrance Day, and I guess let's start with that. As it is Remembrance Day, it's a good time to remember those who've served in the past and what they sacrificed so that we could live a life that we do. And thank you to everyone who does, who has, and will. Absolutely.
Well said, Carl.
Which brings us to some other topics today. We will get to all of those. We will get to a trade involving your Detroit Red Wings. But first, Alberta Podcast Network is sponsored by many fantastic people. And this one, we talked about it a few weeks ago, but it is very good to remind you of the Marvel's Universe of Superheroes exhibit at TELUS World of Science in Edmonton, which talks about all the super cool things. So you can travel through mysterious mirror dimension of Doctor Strange, digitally transform into Iron Man, and pose for selfies with Black Panther, Spider-Man, and other iconic Marvel superheroes. It is taking place right now and runs until February 17th, which is right around my birthday. So if I happen to be in Edmonton with time to kill, maybe I'll do that for my birthday.
Just get into your Iron Man suit and fly over.
You know what? I probably should. Head to telusworldofscienceedmonton.ca to buy tickets. It's the only place that this is happening in Canada. So if you want to do it, head to Edmonton and check it out. You saw the end of something very special this week, Nick.
I did.
Did you? You watched part of it. You watched the Islanders. Their win streak's over. Congratulations, Islanders. You won 10 games in a row. And it was so memorable that Nick clearly it was hot on his mind.
So let me clarify. I said I watched an Islanders game. I didn't tell you which one. I did not watch the one where they lost that 10-game losing streak.
Did you watch the one where they extended it, or just a regular game afterwards?
I just watched a regular game after. Like a Saturday afternoon, I was laying on my couch. I was like, well, hockey's on. Hey, The Islanders. We talked about this on the podcast. So I actually followed up on something we talked about on the podcast. And I watched an Islanders game.
And
they won. It was against the Florida Panthers. I kind of had 3 key takeaways from the game. Okay. 1, Matthew Barzal, very good player.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, when he's on the ice, it's like complete focus is on him. Very exciting to watch. Number 2, I thought their defense as a whole was very, very strong on both ends of the ice. Offensively, they kept the puck in. They kept the cycle going. I thought it was really good. And defensively, they did a good job of keeping the Panthers to the outside. Number 3, Thomas Greiss faced 38 shots in this game, and he allowed 1 goal.
So is that because the defense did such a good job of keeping the pucks to the outside, or was he just really good?
He was really good.
Okay.
He was really good. Yeah, the defense did do a good job of keeping the puck to the outside, but it's also worth noting that the Florida Panthers are also very good, and they've got some players who can get into the high danger chances. I remember seeing Barkov get in, Dadonov got in for a few, but yeah, Greiss was very good.
So with that, then the streak's over. There's lots of great things to think with the Islanders, right? They lost, came back and won again. Do they look like a playoff team?
They did to me. It's pretty crazy, Carl, how if you just watch some of these games, you'll see why these teams are winning. Instead of just looking at names on a website and being like, nah, they're not that great.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, and this is something that this is not Islanders related, but when you watch them play and you see them winning, I think as well of the Leafs, a team that's won a lot of games this week and had the angriest of fan bases the entire time.
Well, that's just Toronto fans, though, right? No matter how good they have it, they'll find something to complain about.
Which is fantastic. I love it so much.
You know what? What I will say about the Leafs, though, they have won a lot, but their wins have not come easy.
No, so I don't know. I assume you probably watched the game against Philadelphia Saturday night.
I did, yeah.
That was I watched another game of theirs this week. That was the only one I watched in its entirety was the Flyers game. And they played well. Like, sure, they lost that game, but they certainly played well enough to win that game.
Yeah, I agree. I think they played fine, but I think they're so much better than the Flyers that your opinion should be more than just they played well. Like, if you look at their individual talent, it should be, they crushed the Flyers.
Right. Well, and one of their individual talents now gone from that game.
Yeah, that was a weird injury.
Super weird. I looked at it and I was like, that, honestly, it looked like it was like something with his skate happened.
Yeah.
And that's why he couldn't stand on it. So I'm like, you just fell over. Like, you literally just got hooked on the draw, but out a month for Mitch Marner.
Brutal. I wonder if he hurt it anymore taking that second shift.
Because he didn't put any weight on it as he left.
No.
So
none.
Not good for the Leafs. Certainly doesn't help them. But hey, they managed to survive without John Tavares in the lineup for a long stretch, and he's way more important to this team than Mitch Marner is.
Yeah, I agree. They'll be fine.
Yeah, they'll keep doing it, and then keep fighting to fire Mike Babcock. So good for them.
Yeah, good for them.
But it brings us to what everyone has been talking about since that Leafs game on Saturday night. Don Cherry also fired this week. So what I was planning to talk about today was like, what should they do with Don Cherry? And then they went ahead and about 30 minutes before we sat down to record today, Don Cherry was removed from his role with Sportsnet. Couldn't be happier that he's gone.
I'm shocked they actually did it after all these years.
And all the things he said.
And all the things he said that have been so offside. I'm surprised they actually went ahead and did it.
I agree. Because we've talked here about the fact of, his inappropriate comments, his, like you said, offside, right?
Yeah.
It's not a secret that he thinks these things because he shares them frequently.
Yep. Yeah.
So Sportsnet did come out today, and fired him, and did the whole like, thank you for your time, we appreciate it kind of a thing. Because their official statement: sports brings people together, it unites us, not divides us. Following further discussions with Don Cherry after Saturday night's broadcast, it has been decided it is the right time for him to immediately step down. During the broadcast, he made divisive remarks that do not represent our values or what we stand for. Don is synonymous with hockey and has played an integral role in growing the game over the past 40 years. We would like to thank Don for his contributions to hockey and sports broadcasting in Canada.
So,
Go ahead.
You want to know what I got from that? After having conversations with Don, there was a conversation where they were like, hey, Don, we need you to issue an apology. And he was like, I'm not apologizing for what I said.
Right. Well, he in an interview today, he said I know what I said and I meant it. Everyone in Canada should wear a poppy to honor our fallen soldiers. I speak the truth and I walk the walk.
The thing is, though, that's not what he said.
Right. But if you had have actually stood there and said, I think everyone should wear a poppy, you would not have been fired.
Correct.
But in specifically targeting groups of people who are not from Canada, who have moved here, and doing that, you made it a very unwelcoming environment, right? And that's what, the sports that statement says. We want to unite people. We don't want to divide people. And I fully agree that that's something that we should be doing, right? Like if you think that is an okay way to act towards other people, you are the one who should go away.
And that's what they're making him do now. I totally agree. And this has been this has been part of his shtick forever. And dates back to whatever the 90s when he used to talk about Ontario boys versus the Russians and the Europeans, and they're so soft and they play like girls, and this is nothing new for Don Cherry. We've all known he feels like this.
Yeah.
So
and now we're rid of it. So they haven't said, obviously this news just came out. They haven't said what they're going to do during that first intermission of Hockey Night in Canada. Do you want something, or just like another big panel thing? Because I assume that's what they're going to do in the meantime, right? Is have another?
Yeah, they can't do another panel. I'm sick of panels. Aren't you sick of panels?
It depends who's on that panel. Like if you put Brian Burke on that panel, I'm probably not sick of that panel yet.
Is Burke even on Hockey Night in Canada anymore?
He does some stuff with Sportsnet.
He does Hockey Central or something, like Wednesday Night Hockey.
Yeah. And what I want is just a panel, and not a panel. I want Brian Burke calling players and just him interviewing them like out of the blue. He doesn't warn them. He doesn't prep them. He just calls them. Because they always seem like they never know what's happening, and it's always the most candid of interviews. That's what I want from that segment.
That would actually be a really good segment, but I don't know if it's it can't be a first intermission on Hockey Night in Canada segment.
No, it wouldn't be.
No, give him his own podcast though, where he does that.
Yeah, Brian, you can come on this podcast and do that. That'll be great.
100%. Maybe we should do that to him.
just call him up. We'll tune into that next week. That'll be both our best and worst of next week's episode.
Yeah, so it'll be the shortest episode in the history of the show.
Yeah,
just click. I don't know. I think they need to do something relevant to the game that's on. Like they need to do some sort of kind of immediate analysis of what's happening during that game. I kind of think they should bring someone younger in. I don't know exactly what their viewer demographics are, but I would think that they're now going to look at their target demographics and say, how can we get more young people, millennials, to tune into our show on Saturday night? And I think their next segment is going to cater to that.
The only reason I also thought that, but you think back to how long ago? 3 years ago when they brought George Stroumboulopoulos on and like completely redid the way that they were doing Hockey Night in Canada. And he's gone. They brought back Ron McLean. He's doing all of his stuff. And so they tried that once and it didn't work. And so I also think that they need to find it, but they need to be able to do it in a way that brings people who are already involved in the hockey community in instead of shoving a popular Canadian on television.
They need to find the right person. No offense to Strombo, great guy, and his roots are deep in the music side of Canada, but they need to find someone who knows their hockey, knows their history, and can talk about the hockey topics, the relevant stuff. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. I kind of hope they don't go old guy yells at cloud. Like as much as I love what you get from Burke and how unexpected it can be, I hope they go a little younger. Maybe even bring a woman in to do it.
I think that'd be great. Yeah. There's no reason why not.
I actually wouldn't be that surprised if they already have a plan in place.
I assume that because there was talk in the off season that he would not be back.
Correct.
Which probably stemmed from some very, very flushed out plans that were in place. So yeah, I'm with you there.
So can I ask one more question before we move on from this topic?
Yeah.
Thoughts on Ron MacLean and how he's kind of navigated the whole thing?
I'm impressed. Ron MacLean is someone I've always been like. He's typically someone who handles situations with class.
Yeah.
If not for the fact that he uses far too many tragically hip quotes when he's on television. but certainly, to go out there, and he didn't say, sorry if I offended you. He said, I messed up. I should have done better. You deserve better, and owned it. I was impressed, and first thing out of the gate to do that, I appreciate that, and really that's what we should all do when there's something like that where we put our foot in our mouth or don't act the way that we ought to.
Yeah,
own it and work towards fixing it.
I agree, and he did it twice. He did the tweet, and then he did it on air too. He could have done the tweet and just left it at that.
Yeah, I think he had to do it on air, though. It would have been weird to never acknowledge that on air.
Yeah, maybe. Then you could have just done it on air and not do the tweet. I don't know. I think he truly felt bad for how that all went down.
Yeah. I mean, I get. No, I don't get. I understand that it was a difficult situation, and we've seen him not know how to handle Don Cherry for many, many years.
Right.
So
do you think he has a role in the next first intermission segment?
I think so. I think this week he does, but I don't know what that becomes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens this week.
Yeah, but we'll tune in and see what happens there. Nick, you and your Detroit, specifically you, and your Detroit Red Wings made a little deal this week.
It's true. I worked very hard on this trade.
Can you break down how that trade happened for us?
Yeah, I was working my phone, opening the old Twitter app and typing stupid stuff, and then I got a notification that Steve Yzerman did a lot of good work and made that trade happen.
You accidentally, you were like, oh, let me just type in, let's see what Jacob De La Rose has been doing this week. And then little did you know you accidentally traded him.
Yeah, whoops.
And you had autosave turned on so you couldn't go back and redo it. And here you go.
Yeah, thanks, Microsoft. I was actually like that. So that trade happened after, I don't remember what night it was, but it was after a game where they got crushed. I think it was 5-1 or 6-1 or.
Is that the Rangers game?
Yeah. So it must have been last Sunday.
It was 5-1 because that game's on my television right now, and we'll talk about why later.
Okay. So anyways, it was after that game, and I was going to bed, and I rolled over, and I heard my phone go off, and I was like, Detroit made a trade. And I saw Del Rose for Fabbri, and I was like, that's actually a really good trade. And then I put my phone down and went to bed. So that was my initial... That was my initial analysis on it. Good trade.
So you were burning the midnight oil on that trade is what you were doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know it. Trade deadline season style. They picked up Jacob De La Rose last year on the waiver wire. So they took a waiver wire acquisition and traded him for Robby Fabbri, who is a former first-round pick, I believe.
Yeah.
First round, 21st overall for St. Louis. Had a very good rookie season in the NHL and then just got plagued with injuries.
A lot, yeah.
Really bad knee injuries. I think he's had multiple surgeries on them. But he comes to Detroit. He plays in the very next game. He scores 2 goals on the power play. And then, what day is today? Monday. Last night he played again, got an assist on the game-winning goal.
So you're sold.
I was sold on this the night that I saw the trade happen before falling asleep.
Your sweet dreams were all about Robby Fabbri.
Yeah, I've liked him since he was on the World Juniors team.
Yeah, he was a guy that, I mean, I loved. He comes in, scores, just about 20 goals rookie year. And then, like you said, the injuries and just someone I was like, all right, this is the year. He's recovered from his injury. Here he goes. And then he's hurt again. So it's nice to see, this year already played 11 games so far this year. And obviously looking well enough to perform. It's just, can he hold up?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm assuming they went through all the medical testing and screening before that trade went through too.
Yeah,
but,
you would think.
Like, if he was deemed to be perfectly healed, no glaring issues right now, why would St. Louis make this trade?
Right. Well, that's the big question that I have. And part of it in looking into it was earlier this year, Doug Armstrong said, "Hey, if there's not room for you on this team, we're gonna move you to a situation where you can actually have a chance." But then we see what he's done with, some power play time in Detroit and, some extra little bits. And maybe you should have been able to find room for him in your lineup. When you've got Vladimir Tarasenko out, like he's not your 14th best forward. I saw, who did they pick up? They signed Troy Brouwer and Jamie McGinn to PTOs today. You can fit Robby Fabbri in your lineup when you're signing those guys to PTOs. Come on.
That was my exact thought when I saw that. Why did you trade that young first-round draft pick if you're going to go sign PTOs, Troy Brouwer? Come on. What are these guys doing? I mean, I'm not complaining. It worked out for my team.
Yeah. But unnecessary. So good for you. De La Rose, just a whatever player going back to St. Louis.
Yeah, he's like a bottom line grinder. He's a strong hockey player. He grinds it out against the boards. He can recover the puck. He can throw it out in front of the net. He's not like an elite passer by any means. He's never going to get anything more than fourth line minutes. He'll likely float between being a healthy scratch and filling in for an injury.
So he essentially, to me, he sounds like 24-year-old version of Troy Brouwer.
Right.
So they brought in old man Troy Brouwer to train new Troy Brouwer on how to Troy Brouwer things.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
I don't get it from their perspective.
Right. Well, that's good for you. Good for you. And yeah, certainly I agree with the sentiments and was very confused as well. Which brings us to a topic that I know is going to be difficult for you to talk about, Nick.
Oh boy.
Hold on.
Okay.
Nick Foligno.
Oh.
Suspended 3 games. Explain your friend's self. What's Nick doing here?
You know what? I don't know. Watching the hit again, I'm not quite sure what he was thinking, other than I deserve to win the Stanley Cup last year, and I'm angry.
Just still better. Yeah. There was no his 3 games for his hit on Pierre-Édouard Bellemare, very deserving of 3 games.
Yeah, it was nasty. I remember I saw it first, like on my phone, small, and I was like, oh, that looks like a bad hit. He'll probably get suspended. But when you watch the player safety video and they show it from every angle and in slow motion, it gets worse and worse and worse with every angle.
Yeah. Well, it was a very easy decision for the NHL, right?
Yeah.
Like, he got kicked out of the game at the time, but he made zero effort to move out of the way. And when Bellemare himself tried to move out of the way, extended the elbow into his head. So
yeah,
pretty easy call for the NHL.
The way he launches into him is really what kind of sells it. Like, he made no effort to avoid this. In fact, he like doubled down and jumped into his head.
Yeah.
Like, it's not good. Yeah, so I think you're right. It was just a matter of how many games.
Yeah. And I think because of the fact he hasn't had this history of trouble before, keeps it at 3. If it had been a repeat offender, this would have been a big suspension.
Yeah, and there was an injury on the play too, right?
Yeah, he is currently concussed. And so he is going, the Avalanche are making their Western Canadian road trip and be coming through town here in a couple of weeks.
Oh, nice.
And actually I should, next Tuesday. I was like, oh shoot, I should figure that out. I was going to get tickets to that game. Next Tuesday, I have 1 week left to figure that out. But he is joining them on that road trip. So as much as there's no such thing as a mild concussion, the thought is that he is obviously well enough to travel, and which is a good sign for him.
Good. That's good. And I'm sure that played heavily into their number of games decision as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
but I don't know what he was thinking. That was a bad hit.
Well, I'm glad that you will not just sit here and blindly defend your friend on the show. So
I won't.
That's appreciated.
He still deserves a Stanley Cup.
He still deserves and your undying affection. So
absolutely.
The I guess it wasn't the NHL, but ESPN. They released an interesting article this week where they dove into and checked out what do players like and do not like around the NHL. So we just kind of wanted to take a peek at some of those. Was there any that stood out to you as like a surprising take right off the hop, Nick?
So I have to say I accidentally read this article, and the reason for that was they teased it on Twitter as like the NHL Players Poll, where they answer whether or not or who has a Twitter account or something like that. And I was like, oh, I wonder if players have Twitter accounts. So I clicked it, kind of hoping I could just read that one question, but it's all the way at the bottom of the article. So I read the entire thing.
That's a dirty trick.
And the one that stood out to me the most was question number 3. Would you play for Seattle in year 1? 60% of the players said yes. 40% said no.
Which, that seems really high.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people 50 players. Okay. So yeah, 60% of those 50 players. I was surprised.
It doesn't seem like enough.
It doesn't feel like a lot, does it?
No.
It's like just a team and a half's worth of players.
So that's what, like 20, that's not 20% of the league. No, it's like 5% of the league.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just like a random assortment of players.
Right.
But I was surprised how many of them said that, yes, they would definitely go and play for Seattle in year 1.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of people who would head over there and do that.
That's good for GMs.
That's great for them, yeah. But then on the flip side, that's because if you look at the question of where would you not want, or where's the worst city to go to, right? You look at that one, and we've got strongly at the front of the pack, Winnipeg.
Yeah, like not even close.
So you look at like those teams, and you're like, well, would you rather go to Seattle or end up in Winnipeg? Or what else? Buffalo was second, I think.
Buffalo, Edmonton,
Calgary. I forget what fifth was. Ottawa.
It's all the Canadian cities.
It's the Canadian cities. It's like, one, it's cold.
Yeah.
The weather's bad. There's not much you can do. And if you go somewhere, they're gonna know who you are. It's not like the American cities where it's like, yeah, I can go. I think Dallas was their number 1 city to visit.
Because they can go out places and no one bothers them.
No one in Dallas knows who Andrei Vasilevsky is. That's not a thing. But here in Canada, that's for sure people are going to notice you. So I'm actually surprised Toronto wasn't higher on the worst cities to visit list, because you've got like the media side of that too.
It's a media nightmare for sure.
Yeah. You come into town and you start getting that. So I don't know. I would have thought that would be higher, but.
Do you, Carl, have gritty fatigue?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm kind of over him. like, yeah, it's funny, but I do appreciate the fact that they have kind of toned it down a little bit.
Yeah, it's really kind of faded out a little bit, which is nice. And then every once in a while, he'll like pop up and spray silly string on Kyle Bukakis on Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. That's an okay thing.
72% of players said no.
They're not over him.
Correct. I think because all their kids like him.
I guess so. Yeah. One thing that was interesting, because this article came out at the same time that The Athletic has been doing a series on like kind of the social culture of the game. And there was an interesting one, and this is maybe this will be our last point on this, but so the NHL doesn't punish for recreational drugs. Is this good or bad? And they said 24% said it's good that they don't, 14% said it's bad, and 62% couldn't care less. Does that surprise you at all?
A little bit. Does recreational drugs mean drugs that are now legal, like marijuana and alcohol?
I would think so. I know that, and again, even in the question, right, the first quote from this was, I think it's both. If you're talking about marijuana and cocaine, one of those drugs is probably beneficial. The other one is not.
Yeah.
So I think if you were to kind of split that up and say, should you be testing for weed?
Yeah.
You'd probably get a different answer.
And you look at the second quote too, if it's not performance enhancing and it doesn't give you an edge, then whatever. So maybe they need to look at it as like not just recreational drugs, but split it up into performance enhancing versus ones that make you sleepy.
Right. Well, and so they, from the Athletic side, there was an article about cocaine use in the league, especially after Evgeny Kuznetsov's suspension for he argues that it wasn't cocaine, but the NHL, well, you know what, looks like it was anyways, and was suspended by the IAHF for it. From that side of it, even players like seem to think it's not as big of an issue as media and fans think, because to me, I certainly had the impression, and maybe you had a different one, that like cocaine was the drug of choice in the NHL.
I thought so too, but after reading some of these answers specifically on whether or not the NHL has a cocaine problem, I'm kind of wondering if I think that because of the past. Like the 80s and 90s, we know for a fact those guys were doing cocaine because they were always getting arrested for it. So I wonder if that's just like a I don't know what you'd call it, like a thing that's just kind of carried over in our minds as something that happens, because 58% of players said no, the NHL does not have a cocaine problem. Yeah.
Which is still pretty high. The fact that 42%, was that the other one, or was there a zero, like a indifferent kind of option there?
There is an I don't know.
Okay.
That was 32%, which was basically just, I'm not going to admit to.
Right. So only
my friends are doing.
So only 10% of players in the league think that there is a cocaine problem.
Correct.
And which is the number, that's what I thought it was. But then, you have some quotes from players. Adam Henrique in this article said that like he feels like it's everywhere, that like whether it's in the season, out of the season, he's out with his friends, and it always seems like they're doing it, which I say to him, hey, if you don't like to do cocaine and your friends are always doing it, maybe get new friends, Adam.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the choice you need to be making. You're a grown man. Figure it out.
No kidding.
But it is interesting, and I think that's something that the NHL doesn't really, if there is a problem with it, is something that they are trying to deal with behind the scenes, so that they don't have this mass suspension, etc., making everyone go into program, because that doesn't look good for your product.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I can only imagine how nervous they get when footage from Stanley Cup parties starts making its way out onto the internet.
Yeah, that's something they're not super excited about. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if something does happen. Obviously, with the ESPN poll, only 14% of players want there to be, some sort of punishment for that. And I would say if you were to make that, just about cocaine, that might be a little bit more. If that was to be a marijuana question, it'd be even less. So
yeah, I think so too.
Well, let's get to our brand new segment. We debuted it last week. You know what? You do this thing at the end of the show. I got you covered. It's the best and the worst.
Yes. I like how you stuck with my hard rock theme.
I don't see why not. I mean, I'm not going to mess with success over here.
Yeah, whatever works, right?
Best. I brought a best last week. Do you have something that was your best in the NHL this week?
I have a best this week. It made me smile when I saw it. It was Saturday night during that Flyers game and the Leafs on the William Nylander goal. Auston Matthews, I don't know if he faked doing the lacrosse goal or tried and failed to do the lacrosse goal, but then he fed Nylander and they scored. And I'm just so happy. We talked about this last week, but that this is catching on. The players are aware of it. The players want to one-up each other, I think. And we're starting to see it on the ice. So that's my best, is Auston Matthews. Do you think it was like a fake, like he was pretending to do it, or do you think he screwed it up?
I think he screwed it up.
I think he screwed it up too.
Yeah. And I texted you immediately when I saw it. I was like, oh my goodness, he tried. He tried so hard to make that thing happen.
Yes, he did. And they had a good laugh on the bench after too.
Yeah. Which I'm impressed, because in trying to do it, messing up, and then still turning that into a pass out front to Nylander, talented guy.
That's the most impressive part almost.
Yeah.
My concentration would be so thrown off after failing.
Right. I would literally, we'd still have possession. I would just skate off to the bench and sit there in shame.
Yeah, absolutely. But I bet you that he's been practicing that in practice every day since they saw that goal.
Well, Svechnikov was teaching the Hurricanes. They had at practice, probably one of the optional morning skates that everyone hates now.
Right.
He was like, all right, guys, let's go to the morning skate. I'll show you how to do it.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. My worst of the week, and actually I was torn because I told you last week, I was like, I'm going to do worst of the week, and I'm going to try to figure out who had statistically the worst week in the NHL.
Yeah. And
then the Vancouver Canucks happened.
Right.
I'm sure by now you've seen overtime against St. Louis. It's 3-on-3. They get a shot on net. And what typically happens in 3-on-3, right? You take a shot, and then all of a sudden they're going the other way with numbers when it doesn't work out.
Right.
In this situation, one of the Canucks slipped going back towards his own net, took out his other player, while the last one had taken the shot and was back behind the net as well. So this led to the St. Louis Blues having the ever so rare 3-on-0 in overtime, which apparently that's really hard to stop. Did a great job. I think it was Markstrom in net that night. Did as good a job as he could trying to stop a 3-on-0, but you could tell him he was literally pooping his pants as they came down on the 3-on-0.
Yeah, I would have been. I'd just been like, "Nope, see you guys." Out the gate.
Yeah, full on. You would have been like me, missing the lacrosse goal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But the Canucks have had a pretty bad stretch as of late, eh?
Yeah, it's not a good look for them right now.
After such a strong start, too. I guess it was kind of bound to happen to a certain extent. But that's a pretty comical way to lose a game.
Yeah, and it's over. There's no, you don't get to come back from that. There's no next shift. That's it.
Do you think they watched the video of that after? Is that something that had to be broken down in the video meetings?
I think yeah. I mean, if I'm the video coach, I'm forcing them to watch that. Here's what you did. All right, now see, don't fall over and take out your own player. Especially when there's only 3 of you on the ice. I think whenever 2/3 of your team can be laying on the ice, it's probably a good thing, right?
Yeah. It was probably the onboard entertainment on the plane the next night.
Yeah.
Just no options. You just have to watch this overtime.
Yeah. This is what you're doing tonight. Yeah, not good. My other one, and in trying to find the statistically worst week of the game, brought me to the New York Rangers. And there was a lot of games this week, and I just noticed this isn't exhaustive, but Jacob Trouba had himself a very awful week. And one of those games was against your Detroit Red Wings. And so right before we pulled up the show, I watched the condensed version, so like the 9-minute versions of every game this week, trying to find out, I look at it and I see what he did or didn't do this week. All 3 games, Corsi-wise, he was like significantly below 50%. I believe there was one game he was 2 for 15. And now part of what doesn't help his cause is he does play on the penalty kill. So you're going to take a lot of shot attempts there, but even still, a struggle for him this week.
But you got to look at 5-on-5 though. How is this 5-on-5?
Still not very good.
Okay.
Yeah. No, trust me. I did do that. And so in watching, had one point this week, a shorthanded assist, which impressive, sure. But in watching the Detroit Red Wings game, noticed that for him and his defensive partner, a lot of shots against, and a lot of times where he's really just not fully useful on the ice. A lot of times where I was watching Jacob Trouba and I'm like, all right, you just got scored on. What are you doing? And he's standing there, not really helping the play in any way. Or, he'll chase the guy behind the net, take out the guy that he's marked on, but now he's stuck behind the net laying down on some guy and they score. Which when you are Jacob Trouba, the very highly paid defenseman for the New York Rangers, you need to be able to drive what's happening there.
Well, yeah, you're also leading the team in time on ice. Like he has more time on ice, average time on ice per game than anyone else on that team.
Yeah.
So not a great look for him.
So was there any, as a defenseman, it's usually, okay. I find if a defenseman doesn't stand out to you, that's usually like an okay sign. Could be a good
thing.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. Did he stand out to you at all in watching that? I'm not sure how much of the 5-1 Red Wings loss you watched, but in that game.
I think I tuned it out after it became like 3-0. But he didn't stand out to me, which I know we said it can be a good thing for a defenseman. I don't think that's a great thing for Jacob Trouba. Because he's not the kind of defenseman who blends in and disappears.
Right.
He needs to be creating.
So in that game, 5-on-5, a game that the Rangers won 5-1.
Yeah.
He had 13 shot attempts when he was on the ice, 23 against. So he was out-Corsied by 10. And it doesn't give the 5-on-5 time on ice, but like you said, leading the team, he had 19 minutes that night.
That's really bad against a team like the Red Wings.
Right. Yeah. So he and you know what? I didn't want to give his D partner.
Just going to ask you that.
Libor Hayek the full blame as well. I didn't want to lob him in because, the 21-year-old defenseman playing his 20th game in the league. Because Jacob Trouba should be able to carry that. Like if you're that defenseman, if you're that stud, you need to be able to do that. And this week, not so much.
Yeah, that's what you're being paid for.
Yeah.
Like he's got, I get it. He mostly defensive zone starts. He's probably playing against the other team's top player lines, but you're paid to be good in those situations. Like that's who you are as a player.
Right. Well, and you know what? I thought the exact same thing when I was looking at it. It's like, you know what? It's probably a lot of defensive zone starts. It's probably a lot of matched up against the best players. But let me just confirm here real quick. He was on par in every single game of like where he was taking his draws, except for one. So except for the Florida game where they lost in overtime. He wasn't really like having significant differences than the rest of his team on where he was starting. So it's just a bad week for Jacob Trouba, and I don't expect that to continue. And we'll see as this week goes what happens to him.
Good find. I wasn't aware of that.
Well, that's what I wanted. We all saw how bad the Canucks were, but we might not have seen how bad Jacob Trouba was this week. And I'm sure after last week, actually, and what I said that upset New Yorkers last week, I'm sure they're not going to be happy with me this week, unless they're also on board against Jacob Trouba. I guess I should apologize. Sorry to New Yorkers. I am now very aware that New Jersey is not in New York and should not be included as part of, quote, the New York trilogy. That's not a thing. And whoops. I heard.
I knew that wasn't going to go well.
You did warn me, and I did not listen. Do we let's pick? I know we haven't been doing it every week this season, but let's share some of our must-watch things of the week. How do you feel about that?
I feel good about that. Let me pull up the schedule.
All right. So while we pull up our schedules, reminder to everyone, head on over to our Twitter account, which is at Fourth Line Podcast with the number 4, Facebook.com/the Fourth Line Podcast, where you can, yell at me if I've upset you about the New York Rangers, or anything else that myself or Nick have upset you about this week. You can yell at us there, or share in as you listen to the show, or play high sticking, where you send in a goalie, a forward, and a defenseman. You get whatever games they play. If they get goals, assists, wins, or a shutout, you get points. We track them up, and we'll send you out a Fourth Line Podcast merch, pucks, some stickers. Those will be heading out to you. If it wasn't a federal holiday today and the post office was closed, I would be doing the same thing. So this smell's not going away, Nick. And it's
my God.
It's a little distracting right now. I think we're going to quickly wrap up the show.
Yeah, probably a good idea.
What I was trying to say was that I would be mailing out pucks today, but I can't because the post office is closed. So
right.
Nonetheless, must-watch games of the week.
Let's start with Tuesday, November 12th. Should we... Oh, what a random kind of collection of games. Pittsburgh and New York Rangers. See how Jacob Trouba does?
Yeah, let's find out. How good is he? That game, a big one. Sidney Crosby out for the Penguins.
Yeah, true.
So we'll see how how they do without him. Obviously, they managed to get by without Malkin for a while. As good as Malkin is, Crosby's a little more important to that team.
For sure.
So we'll see what they do. So that's a good pick. There are a lot of and weirdly good games on Tuesday too. You're like, oh, those are two teams that keep winning.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'll you know what my best of the week would have been, Nick?
What's that?
The second period in Colorado versus Nashville when the Avalanche scored 6 goals.
Oh, sorry, I missed that one.
It was quickly nullified by the fact that Nathan McKinnon didn't play the third period, and I was terrified. But it's fine. Anytime your entire first line can be out with injury, you're fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
But now Nikita Zadorov is out for a while, so we'll see how that goes. Wednesday, November the 13th. I mean, the question I have for you, there's Islanders Leafs. Are Islanders fans still bitter? Like, is that where we're going to see that game?
I mean, the question I was going to ask you are there any more John Tavares Islanders jerseys to be burned?
Yeah, those might all be gone.
I guess we should find out, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's still going to be a huge to-do like it was before, but somebody should recirculate that Dear John video.
Most certainly. Similarly, one thing, I forgot to bring this up earlier. I assume you saw the Dallas Stars comments from Coach Jim Montgomery.
I did not.
No. Oh, okay. Well, Jim Montgomery, coach of the Dallas Stars, must be, the Stars are not doing very well this year. So he must be trying to, recycle old content, but doesn't have the full, desire to go as strong as Jim Lights did. So he said he was disappointed with Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn so far this year, and said that they needed to be better.
Wow. So he's Jim Light.
Light. Yeah. So that's good. Good on him to try.
Yeah. Whoever made it this far to the podcast, we just lost them.
Yeah. He did go a little bit more detailed. He said, I don't think they're driving pucks too often. In general, our team not driving pucks to hard areas enough. You need your number one center. You need your number one left winger to step up and do more. Jamie Benn responded to that, saying, we believe that with our system, we're going to get chances. Haven't been successful just because we've been lucky as of late. Which I don't think that's what that means, Jamie.
No. No.
It's because we believe in what we're doing. Just got to stick with that. So,
why are these guys always arguing with each other through the media? Can someone not organize a friggin' sit down between these two guys in an office so they can talk face to face? What is going on there?
Apparently they realized last year, you know what? The only way to spark a fire in Dallas is to call them out publicly.
Oh my God.
And so we're back to that.
This is wild. This is crazy.
Yeah. Well, good times in Dallas. Also some terrible, terrible Winter Classic jerseys for them.
Oh, I didn't see that, but why is Dallas in the Winter Classic?
In Dallas even. Yeah. I think that's what we all think of when we think New Year's Day hockey.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, after all that, Wednesday's must-watch game, I would be going Capitals, Flyers, or Leafs Islanders.
I'll be watching Leafs Islanders.
That's probably where I will start, mostly because I want to see. Now I just watch for like the tire fire in Toronto. It's just so I can follow along on Twitter as the game's happening.
It's wonderful.
It's a great thing to see.
Yeah. Okay, so Toronto, New York.
Yeah.
Okay. Thursday. We got going on Thursday. We could do Winnipeg facing their old divisional rivals, the Florida Panthers.
I don't know why I also thought of that game as like an old division rivalry. I don't know why I thought that, but I'm glad we're on the same page there.
Remember when Winnipeg was the same division as Florida? It's crazy. I think Colorado Edmonton will be a good game.
Yeah, that'd be my pick as well.
Yeah, let's do that one.
Friday. I mean, Leafs Bruins is happening Friday.
Yeah.
That's always one. If you are sick of watching the Leafs, though, maybe Montreal, Washington.
That's where my eye went to. Yeah, agreed.
Which brings us to Saturday. I know I'll be watching whatever the first Hockey Night in Canada game is that day so that I can see what happens on that first segment, which I guess is Leafs Penguins.
Yeah, it'll be Toronto Pittsburgh.
So that's what I'll be watching
to
find out what that first segment is.
Why don't we pick an afternoon game too, since there are a lot?
Oh, there are a lot of those.
Never mind.
If you want to watch an afternoon game, Calgary, Arizona. Oh, Winnipeg, Tampa. That's a good that's a good game. That's your afternoon game of choice.
It's the best of the bunch.
And which brings us to Sunday. Usually a light schedule. It is a light schedule, and I'd go back to the Flames. Flames, Knights, a nice Pacific Division matchup.
Agreed.
Well, there we go. Lots happened in the NHL this week, and we'll see what happens as we go into this week. We'll have more best and the worst. If you have something that was your best or worst of the week, send those in to us as well. We'd love to hear what your favorite thing or least favorite thing was in the league. Maybe there's something we missed, and there was certainly something we missed. Let's not question that, but would love to know your thoughts on what the best and the worst were for you. Before we go, let's remind everyone about the Alberta Podcast Network, a fantastic place for podcasts and a fantastic place to go for new podcasts, and one that is certainly relevant these days is one of our great sports podcasts, the 2 and Out podcast, which is a CFL show. Grey Cup this year, hosted in Calgary, and they're actually doing a live show down here. I believe it is already sold out. So if you are wanting, and it's at a fantastic rib and crab shack in town here. So if you were hoping to go to that, check if they are able to get any last second tickets. But I do believe that is sold out, which is fantastic. That's great that they're able to sell that out. 2 and Out is the name of the show, though. There you go. It is. Went on their website, sold out almost a month ago. They fully sold out. So head on over there. Travis and Ty do a fantastic job. 2 and Out CFL podcast is your place to go as we ramp up to the Grey Cup. You can find us at thefourthlinepodcast.com, at Fourth Line Podcast on Twitter, facebook.com/The Fourth Line Podcast. And we will be back next week with, hopefully less people get fired this week. That would be nice. I'd like that. But until then,
it's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. It's time to say goodbye to Don Cherry. Coach's Corner's dead, which makes us all very happy.